You're listening to DruidCast episode 225, a Mabinogi special.
Roedd Math fab Mathonwy yn arglwydd arwynedd, a Phryderi fab Pwyll yn arglwydd ar un cartref ar 20 yn y de. Dyma oedd y rhai hynny, 7 camtref Dyfed a 7 Morgannwg, a 4 Ceredigion a 3 Ystrad Tywydd. Ac yn yr amser hwnnw, ni fyddai Math fab Mathonwy byw, ond tra fyddai a'i ddeu droed yng nghôl y morwyn, ond ni fyddai cynnwrf rhyfel yn ei rwystro. Dyma oedd y forwyn a oedd ganddo goewin y ferch Pipin, o ddôl Pipin yn Arfon. A honno oedd y forwyn decaf o bawb y gwyddid amdanynt.
Peace. How gentle you are. How precious. How delicate. And how easy it is by the hands of men to destroy you. There had been peace for many years across the 7 cantrevs of Dyfed. The land and people prospered. And as those years passed, so memories of the battle that nearly destroyed 2 islands, and of the great mist that befell the kingdom, began to fade. Maybe I became complacent, overconfident that this peace would last. But one night, as I lay sleeping at my court beside the mound of Gorsedd Arbedd, in my dream I found myself on horseback. Ahead of me paced a pack of wondrous hounds, whose fur was white and their ears were red. And as their fur shone, so their ears glistened in the sunlight. Beside me, a tall man in grey, riding upon the back of a grey steed, a hunting horn around his waist. The forest floor danced with the light of 1,000,000 stars. He raised his hand, and we brought our horses to a stop. Then he reached out and took my arm. And I looked into familiar eyes, so ancient they knew no end.
"Beware,"
he said.
"the trickster is coming."
Hello, my friends, and welcome to DruidCast episode 225. I am your host, Dave the Bard, and DruidCast is brought to you on or around the 20th of the month by the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. If you want to find out more about membership to the Order and our courses, you can do that on our website, which is at druidry.org. Opening the show, you heard the prologue of my latest album, Mabinogi, the Fourth Branch, which was released on the 24th of April. It's the culmination of 10 years' work that brings the four branches of the Mabinogi to audio, combining storytelling with poetry, music and song. So, to celebrate that, I am dedicating this episode to that journey. I created the audio and my wife Kerry created the artwork for the CDs. Yeah, it's such a shame that the age of the CD is almost over, because the artwork she created to illustrate the album covers has been astounding. But anyway, we sat together and had a chat about the mythology of the Mabinogi, what it has meant to us over the years, and the journey to create this epic series of albums. So, my friends, grab your cuppa and come with us.
The talkie bit.
Okay, so peculiar scenario. Me interviewing somebody who I already know most of the answers to these questions. But I guess I'm trying to think of
for the listeners.
For the listeners,
yes,
and for those who may be interested in how the creative process works when you're working with mythologies and things like that. I'm just going to ask Dave some questions. So, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, why record Welsh myths?
Right.
For an Englishman.
Okay.
And also, you know, what's been your relationship with them? You know, so an introduction to your journey
to find the Mabinogi.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my introduction to the pagan and druid path was through ceremonial magic, and when the group that I was working with in my early 20s folded, I was looking for something a bit more earthy, and I looked at Wicca and witchcraft and druidry in the northern tradition, and it was druidry that really spoke to me. And the reason it spoke to me was because of the bardic tradition, because of its love of the arts and of story and of song, and my first love was music, so it just seemed like a no-brainer to explore it a lot more. And so that led me down that path. And when I looked into druidry, I was looking for a myth of my homeland, if you like. You know, I was looking for a myth. Now, I had always considered myself to be British. Not necessarily English, but British. And I think if you ask a lot of English people, that's what they would put down if they would ask, you know, on some kind of census, you know, are you English or British? I think a lot of people would say British. So I went looking for British myths. I've never been a fan of nationalism in any form, and the borders that exist, I respect them for different cultures and the like, but I also know that they are purely human. They don't exist to a fox, they don't exist to a deer, or no other animal sees a border between Wales, Scotland, England, you know. So I've just always thought myself, I live on an island, I'm an island animal, you know, and so I went looking for what I thought would be the oldest stories of the island. And so I went back and back and back, and of course when you look far enough back, you come to the Brythonic, to the Celtic, and then that leads you to, ultimately I think it leads you to the Mabinogian, the book, the Mabinogian, Lady Charlotte Guest's translation, and that contains the four branches, but there are other stories in there as well. There's the Ceridwen and Taliesin story, there's all the other stories in this book. And so I went out. I was a sales rep. I had shorter hair, but still a ponytail. I was living the dream with party at the front and party at the back and work at the front with a bit of a mullet back in the day. Sorry people, but I did have. And
they're all the rage again now.
They are all the rage again, isn't it? You wouldn't think it, but there you are. You would think that was a mistake, and we'd learn from that one.
A lot of things from the 70s were a mistake, but they've come back round again.
Yeah, so I was on the road, and I used to make sure that I could stop near a sacred site or something like that. On this particular trip, I travelled through Glastonbury, probably my first trip through Glastonbury, when I first saw the tour and visited Chalice Well and all that. And in Gothic Image, sorry, we're both have colds at the moment, so I'm a bit nasally. At Gothic Image, I found the Geoffrey Gant's Penguin book version of the Mabinogi, and I was staying at a hotel, well, B&B really, in Bath, and I arrived there. It's the one that I've told you about that had all the Victorian dolls. Yeah, that wasn't pleasant. 3 of them were sitting in my room. I put them in a drawer.
Oh, little dolls staring at you. I was never a dolly girl.
Yeah. So anyway, I sat in my room and I started to read this book of stories that I felt were the oldest of the island. Mm. And I don't know if I was disappointed, but it wasn't what I was expecting. The language used was very much like a medieval romance. Mm. It was very Christian, and although you could definitely feel the magic there, the language used was really wrapped up in a language that I wasn't used to. So you could sense that Araun was an otherworldly being, coming from Anun. That word intrigued me from the word go, Anun. And you could tell, and of course for me, the most obviously magical story, the most accessible story of all 4 of the branches was the 4th branch. Because in there you had a magician, you had Gwydion, and you had math, and you had the conjuration of an otherworldly being, and you had, the world tree visit and transformations into eagles. It was fantastic. Yet, even in that book, I felt like there was hidden layers that weren't open to me at that point. I just couldn't quite access them. I loved them. And at the same time, I had got an old mandolin. And in my office at lunchtime, I used to take my dog for a walk down to an old oak tree. And I used to walk through the woods with a mandolin, and there were people walking through the woods, and they'd suddenly, can you imagine what they would hear? They'd hear this sound of this mandolin playing and this voice of singing, and then I'd walk past them completely, good afternoon, how are you, and carry on. And it was
a mad hippie in the woods with
a mandolin. I was definitely a mad hippie, that's for sure.
Tie-dye trousers.
I did have tie-dye trousers.
I know.
Not when I was at work, but it was on one of those work walks that I started to write Oak Brimmer Meadow Sweet. And that was the kind of first bardic dive I did into the stories to try and convert those stories into song. But I knew they were Welsh tales, but I just thought they were British tales. I thought they were tales of this island at the time. So I didn't have any disconnection about English or Welsh or anything like that. It was literally, these are stories of this island. So, and I am part of this island. So that's the
it's an interesting thing, isn't it? The British Isles is a conglomeration of so many things over the generations, and I think one of the misconceptions about English people kind of working with inverted commas, seeing the bunny ears here, Celtic stuff is the fact that it sometimes can feel that the English are appropriating again, and they come at it with a colonizer's point of view, and I think that the truth is that actually these myths sing through the land I think, and they sing to everybody, you know, and it's the land talking, and I think that's one of the things. I mean, we've worked with these stories for years in so many different ways,
and through huge ritual as well. You know, at our camps. Yeah.
But the journey over the years. I mean, how many years ago was that?
Oh God, that was in the early. That was probably 94, something like that. Yeah.
So 94. That's, you know, over 30 years of working with these stories. It's taking you 10 years to do the 4 branches as a story and musical interpretation. And you've also worked really closely with Christopher Hughes, the head of the Anglesey Druid Order and all-round superstar.
Yep.
Who we love immensely. How has that journey and working with the researchers and the talking with Chris about the language, how has that journey evolved over the years when you've kind of got a more culturally point of view with Chris's input and other scholars? How has that changed how you've worked with the myths?
Okay, well, maybe I should say, for those who don't know, that the Mabinogi contains a series of 4 stories called the 4 branches, and they are actually the Mabinogi. The other tales aren't part of the Mabinogi itself. So the 4 branches, the first 4 tales, are officially what you would recognise as the Mabinogi. So let's go back to the first branch and the idea of it. As I said, I wrote Oakbrim and Meadowsweet and I wrote Blood Iwith, and those were both on my early albums. And I always wanted to tell the 4 branches of the Mabinogi in song. That was my dream. And in 2012, when I wrote the song Ceridwen and Taliesin that contained poetry and other bits and pieces in it as well, I thought that's how I can do it. I can write a song and then input bits of poetry and continue like that. And I went to the Pagan Spirit Gathering. I guess it was in 2014 maybe, I'm not sure. And I met our bardic buddy Arthur Hines, and I told him of my plan to write an album called The 4 Branches of the Mabinogi, and all 4 branches would be on there as songs. And he laughed and thought that's never going to happen. And I thought, of course it will. And then I went away and I realised that actually that's too ambitious.
No, it's too much.
So I thought, but I started the process. I did an online course with Hans Zimmer. Not personally, but one of his courses that he wrote online on film scoring. And so I did that because I wanted that epic Lord of the Rings scoring within these albums. I wanted them to be like films. I then thought, well, what's the angle to tell the story? And I thought, well, I've never read or heard the Mabinogi, the 4 branches, told through the eyes of the Mabon himself. It's always been a third person thing. And I thought, what if Pryderi was the main narrator of at least the first 3 branches, because we know something else happened in the 4th branch that changes that.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. So Pryderi became the storyteller. And I wrote the 4 branches. I wrote the first branch during our holiday. We went off to Bala in that tiny little one up, one down cottage near Bala. The top floor was the bedroom and the bottom floor was the lounge and kitchen. It was tiny. Oscar was not a tiny dog even then, but we managed it. And I wrote that first branch. I wrote all of that in that week that we spent there. And during that week, we went to Proderi's grave by the churchyard. We went to Tomeni Moor, or whatever it was called. That's terrible, probably a terrible pronunciation. But basically the place where Blodeuwedd and Proderi were supposed to have lived. We went to Dinas Dinlley and various sites with the Mabinogi to really connect with those stories. And I wrote the story, came back, started to record it, did the first score of the orchestration. Then I went off to the Pagan Spirit Gathering again in 2016, and I was sitting there watching S.J. Tucker. And I heard her sing on stage.
Musician.
Wonderful person, beautiful voice, incredible energy. And I thought, you're my Rhiannon. I want you to be Rhiannon. And so I asked her there, and she was very emotional and said yes immediately. And so she became the Rhiannon of the entire journey. From then on, actually, every time Rhiannon sang,
there was nobody else could compare, really.
Yeah, and every time Rhiannon sang, it's her voice. So that's the first branch. The first branch really introduces Proderi and his journey and his birth, where he came from his love between Rhiannon and Pwyll, of that battle between Havgan and Arawn, or Pwyll as the guys, yeah. And then, of course, it comes to the point where the album is finished, and I say to you, I need you to create a gatefold CD cover with it might be more than an 8-page book in that first one. Off you go. Yeah?
Yeah, like the film music, it can't be done until the album's done, really. And then you've got the musician chomping at the bit because he wants to release the album. You're like,
So each album we've done a beta test night, haven't we?
Yeah.
So we've got the Grove and some friends around, and I've literally played them like the beta version of the journey, and then they've given me feedback, and I've gone in and changed a few bits and pieces. But essentially, that is the first time you also hear it in its entirety.
Yeah.
And is that when ideas for the album cover start to materialise?
No, I think the thing is that, obviously I have my own personal journey with the myths as well. So I have a sense of how I perceive the characters and the journey. My job is to, as an artist, is to interpret both of our viewpoints. It's to illustrate the story in a succinct enough fashion that it will fit on a CD cover, whilst also honouring my own emotional connection and the characters, and illustrating the songs individually. So it's a complex process, really, because when you're working with these things, you, like you did with the music, you have to find your journey with it. And I have to do mine really bloody quick.
You do. I can take a year, 2 years.
You can take as long as you like.
You've got 2 months.
I've got 2 months. And I'll be honest, it's not always been easy, because these are complicated stories, and they're not necessarily very female friendly. It's very, very, it throws you a loop to work with these deep energies and tragedies in a lot of cases, so you really have to kind of focus on the magical aspects rather than the human aspects. And I guess, this is one of the processes that we've both gone through, in as much as we are both confirmed animists, which, when you're dealing with something that is written down in
1300s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So smack in the kind of Norman, romances and serious patriarchal words that I can't say in a public forum. You have to kind of look at these not simply as human stories, and that is, whilst honouring the structure of the story as we have it in this form, because those are the only forms we have it in at this precise moment. So it's a complex thing, interpreting that in a visual way. So yeah. So and then that is one of the questions I've written down is, for me as a female artist, trying to interpret that is one thing. Dealing with the complex, slightly triggering aspects of some of these stories. How do you then approach that as a bard trying to interpret these stories without trying to be sensitive to the story, but also trying to be sensitive to a modern ear hearing that, or of a multi-gendered audience?
All right. Well, I think that probably leads us to the point where, having read that Geoffrey Gant's version and feeling there was something missing, I think everything became much clearer when we started talking to Christopher. And when I bought the Will Parker 4 Branches of the Mabinogi book. It's a big old thick old tome, 50 quid I think it cost us even then, and it goes really within depth within the stories of their history, when they were written down, who they might represent. But the thing that absolutely changed things for me was when Christopher, who is obviously his first language is Welsh, we started to talk about the language, the Welsh language, because obviously I'm reading a translation.
Yeah.
And translations never quite hit the mark. There's always words with it, we find it trying to translate the OBOD course into other languages. You need to be very careful with how you translate things so that you can give that same meaning. And I've always loved the Welsh language. That little CD that you get with the OBOD back in the day with the calling the 4 quarters in Welsh. I memorised those and loved them. They sound so magical and poetic and jingly. I guess it's what a jingly
it's a beautiful
language.
language.
It's a jingly language.
It's a beautiful
and
singy language.
Yeah, and there was a few rumblings back in the day that I remember we went to a talk at a Scottish conference where there was a guy there saying that, thinking that the Mabinogi was contained any kind of spiritual messages, it was dangerous, and he kept using the words dangerous.
For goodness.
And I knew there was something there, but I didn't have the language to get back at that argument at the time. And then in walks Christopher with it saying, oh yeah, it's all in the language. What do you mean it's all in the language? Okay, well, it's the suffix of eon, for instance. If the name has eon at the end of it, it's of supernatural erudition, I think he calls it. So Gwydion, Gwion are otherworldly beings because they have a suffix on their name of eon. How would you ever know that if you weren't Welsh? When, if the name has when, it means that is a deific name. Ceridwen, Branwen, they are, I think it means something like white or radiant. And so you go, oh well, there you go, it's in the names. Okay, so these goddess and god names and heroic names and magician names they contain like this, well, hidden to an English speaker but well known, I'm sure, to Welsh speakers, of these almost occult further information about these things. And then I find out that Havgan from the first branch, Havgan, his name means summer. Well, you couldn't get that from reading the translation. It just says Havgan. I don't know what Havgan means. It doesn't explain what Havgan means. So these were the things that I knew were there, but I didn't understand them. I felt them there. Something in me felt them there, but I didn't know what it was until I started to, be taught of the language itself and how it holds these hidden mysteries within the story. And of course, so that then led me to go, and luckily all this happened before I'd written a word. This was all during the exploration phase, the kind of gathering of information of before I'd even put anything pen to paper or whatever. So by the time I got to write the first branch, I could, for the first time, I think, incorporate those mysteries of language into the telling of it in English. So instead of saying in the story, Havgan, whose name means summer, no, I don't do that.
No.
You say Havgan, Puig faced Havgan in battle, and Havgan's eyes shone from beneath his helm, as if he held within him the very heart of summer itself. Yeah, right?
Bardic.
Yeah, and that's what you do. That's what you do as a bard, in my opinion. You re-enchant, And I think that was an absolute gift, and that was part of what enabled me to go deeper into those stories. And it was thanks to, to Christopher particularly. I also looked at some of the words and thought, I know. I have heard Mabinogi audios in the past where people have absolutely butchered these Welsh words and names. I am not
cringeworthy.
I am not going to do that. I am going to show that respect to the language, and I'm going to say. So I went through the whole thing. I highlighted all of the words that I wasn't sure of how to pronounce. And I messaged Chris with a whole list of them, and then he did me audio files as he read.
He's been incredibly generous all the way through
my
this,
word! Yeah, absolutely. So when I say those words, on the whole, I think I've done well enough for an English non-Welsh speaker, to honour those names, that are so important to the story to get right. During the first branch, during the first, second and third branch, I still felt like I was connecting to these stories as a British person. I felt like these stories were part of, even though I'm not Welsh, I still feel that these stories come from beyond the border. You know, we have Gloucester, we have London, you know, all within the Mabinogi. You know, there's a point where the king is touring in Kent. You know, so these, to me, then I thought, no, these stories are. I'm living in this bit as well. You know, they are from the land beneath my feet. So I felt a very strong connection to them during the first, second, and third branch. Unfortunately, between the third and fourth branch, that was when something happened that hadn't happened before, but I started to receive comments on YouTube and things like that, basically saying that what I was doing was cultural appropriation, because I was English.
Yeah.
And that really, really knocked me back, actually. In fact, the fourth branch, at a point, I could see the fourth branch would never be written, because if you hear that enough, I felt like every time I saw it, I was a little bit of my connection was being chipped away. But I will have to say that these are stories of cultural appreciation, not cultural appropriation. These albums have come from a place of love. Of Welsh culture, of Welsh language, of Welsh people, of the land, of the stories, of the sites. You know, I adore them, right? I don't think I could have written it if I didn't, if it was purely as an appropriative thing. I'm doing these stories for the people who want to hear them and love them as much as I do. And I am doing these because of a promise I made to the spirits within the stories themselves, way beyond human beings, which gets to the point a little bit about what you were saying about seeing through the human stories. Yeah,
I was going to say this.
because these tales, they are told as if these characters are human, but I heard somebody say once, and it stayed with me ever since: no myth ever happened, but every myth is true.
Yeah.
And so I unpick the human aspects, if you like, of the Mabinogi story. And what I see within the Mabinogi is tales of elemental forces, of other worlds, of Anun, this other world, the not world, the very deep, and the spirits that dwell within that space that is here and not here all at once.
It's like the complicated relationship between the seen and the unseen. I mean, we live in the seen, therefore, the apparent world, and our relationship with all that we don't know comes through myth and through the language of the land, and how we interpret that and how we build our relationship with the land through myth and the changing seasons and all of that. I mean, it's fundamental animism, and to look at these myths, especially, and I'm banging on about it a bit, but they are quite difficult for a woman to read some of these.
Well,
particularly,
you certainly aren't the only person to say that to
no.
me,
But it's but when you do kind of look at it through an animistic point of view, that shift of seasons, that shift of power, the dynamics that go on are complicated, but they are sometimes really dark interpretations of the Earth's dynamic and how we have to have a relationship with it.
If you look, and the females in the story are not treated well.
No, they're appallingly treated.
And that is one of the things that I wanted to reflect in the story. So in the first branch, for instance, the way that Rhiannon is treated is horrible.
Yeah,
accused of something she didn't do, and then made to, act as a horse to carry people and to tell.
She loses her child.
She's lost her child. And, it's a horrible thing. And when you look at that as a human thing, you go, "Whoa, that's it. I'll never read another bit of this story ever again. It's horrendous, right?" But I haven't always, but it's come certainly during the writing and recording of the first branch. I felt like I really got to know Rhiannon and Pryderi really well. You made me a little pendant. You made me a horse bronze pendant that I wore during the writing and recording of the first branch. It was a kind of Iron Age. I don't know if it was like a Bronze Age depiction of a horse, and I wore that throughout that, and I wanted to really connect with Rhiannon, and I did. And I came to the conclusion that you can read the Mabinogi, and if you look into it and look beyond the way that she is treated as a human person, if you then look at how she responds, because there can be nothing more. She loves nothing more than her child. And in the story, in the translation, when Pryderi returns, it's very a matter of fact. And I thought, no, it can't be matter of fact.
No.
That's something huge that is just happening. And as I was writing the Mother and the Mabon song, which is the reuniting of Pryderi and Rhiannon, all that was going through my head was, if we went off to the New Forest at the time where the foals are just old enough to be horses, little horses, if you watched a mare and her foal, that's Rhiannon right there. That's Rhiannon and Pryderi right there. And that's what the animistic thing is, that is to me, that's what that story is trying to get across, that emotion of love for another something that is beyond logic or anything else. It's just overpowering, you know.
I think this is one of the things that both of us have found and has evolved even more so over the years, interpreting it in our own particular creative fashions, is the fact that the more you work with these stories, and we've worked with them, you know, in camps, we've had like 70 people walking through the mythologies, meeting the characters who have been invoked by various people, and having conversations, but more so when you have this personal connection to try and interpret it. You have to have a deep conversation with each character within, and the more and more the animal has come through. You know, it's like, for me, particularly with this last album, I had a real issue for a number of reasons, personal reasons, with the last one. And it wasn't until I realised how much of the animals this story spoke about that I could drop the human thing completely, absolutely, dealing with Gwydion and Gilfaethwy
Doing what they
do, and the punishments that are inflicted on them, but then they go on to do. I mean, you know, whether they actually learn their lessons or not is another issue. But I was able to get through the art and the creativity of it by seeing the animals speaking through these stories, and that connection of the magic and the transformations that go on. So for me, being an animist, it's brought the stories to much more magical level than just reading the kind of, you know, Middle Ages kind of version of social interaction, which I think is
problematic,
to say the least.
Yeah.
So yeah, the way the characters put. I mean, I suppose that takes us into the characters. I mean, I find it quite hard to even say Gwydion without calling him a complete git, and I know because he is, you know, he's a mover and a shaker, particularly in the fourth branch. But again, like I say, it's kind of how you develop your characters, relationships with the characters through, gives you that sense of where the story's going, and whether you believe them to have been gods, goddesses, seasonal aspects, elemental aspects like Manawydan, for me is often kind of almost like the harbour of a sea. It's not like the sea per se, that's clear. There are magical ways of interpreting these. So how is your relationship
with those?
Do they come to you as personalities? Okay. That's what I'm saying.
All right. So during my bardic grade work with Obod, the guide who came to me was Blodeuwedd, but even back then, my harp is called Blossom because of that purpose. Her voice, my harp's voice to me is Blodeuwedd's voice. So she is Blossom. And Blodeuwedd walked with me during my bardic grade, during my ovate work. When I went into my ovate grove, I was met by a woman who opened her eyes, and I looked into her eyes and I just saw the eternity of the stars. And she said that she was Arianrod and she was the guide during my ovate work. And that all happened before, way years before I started to work on these albums. So I already felt I had a relationship with those two goddesses before I started the work of this album. As they do, they kind of step back out of your life after a while as well, and others walk in. So I knew that there were points during the telling of the story that did need to be handled with sensitivity. And I also wanted to make some of those moments far more magical, if you like, because I felt some of those moments were incredibly magical. I would say, like the forming of Blood Iwedd, for instance, by Math and Gwydion. She's conjured by the flowers of oak broom and meadowsweet to be a wife for Pryderi, all right? And it doesn't really go into any real detail of that, And when I looked of how I felt that story and the Will Parker's interpretation and things like that, I felt that there was more going on here. In fact, what came from me, from the first branch, I felt that certain aspects of these tales were being guided by the forces of Annwn, by the otherworld, by what we would maybe call the fairy, or the Teluth Teg, or whatever. The people and denizens of that other place were manipulating things in this world so that they could come through. And you see that with Rhiannon when she rides out of the hill, and when Pryderi is stolen as a baby, and all this. It's like the other world is constantly getting its claws in to the story. And when I had a divination deck once, and it had Blood Iwedd in there, and underneath her was the word betrayer. And I thought, and I've never seen that,
No.
I've never seen that aspect as the definition of who she is. And what I have always felt was that there was more going on here, and once more the other world was going, there's an opportunity here to be something other than what we are, to be born into flesh with nerve endings and sensuality and all that kind of stuff. And there's an opportunity there, because there's this, he's half one of us, Pryderi, He's half one of us. He is twice born, but he's been cursed not to have a wife. Oh, look, Gwydion and Math are magicians. They're off to conjure a wife. Well, shall we provide a wife? Sure. Okay. And
who's up for an adventure?
And so this being is conjured by the great magicians. And they were great magicians, but I don't think that there's something else going on here. And so what I wanted with Blood Iwedd in the version that I tell is I want her to still retain that energy of that other world. And you know this because when Pwyll is transformed into the guise of Arawn, goes into the other world, he doesn't lay a finger on Arawn's wife because he's got human ethics, right? Arawn can't believe it. What? He doesn't have those ethics because they're human ethics. The other world has different morals, if they have any at all. They might be amoral, They just exist. So when you have a spirit born into this world as human, as a beautiful woman, and she's never experienced touch before, she's not born from our, so she's not a betrayer. She's following her true nature, in my opinion. Like if I say something like, to expect her to behave would be like trying to tame a storm or a wild beast. It's against their inner nature to be like that. So
I think it's also the folly of human beings to believe that they can control something. Everything. Yeah. It's like, I'm a fabulous musician.
Thank you.
You're a fabulous magician. Therefore, I control the world. Yeah. No, this is your learning about power with, not power over.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I wanted to work with Blodeuedd, the Maiden of Flowers. And of course, Gwydion is a complicated character. If you see him purely as a human, then you're in dead trouble. But these are myths, and like I say, no myth ever happened, but all myths are true. And if you look at myths all over the place, particularly Northern European myths, the stories wouldn't happen if it wasn't for someone who was a little bit difficult.
Like Loki, Gwydion.
Exactly. Like Loki, if he wasn't in those Norse and Germanic myths,
nothing would ever happen.
It would be all very, very nice, thank you very much, and no one would learn anything. But he goes in there, and the stories are basically him trying to sort out the stuff that he's already cocked up. That seems to be Norse myth. That seems to be Norse myths, right. In a nutshell. And if you look at the fourth branch, that's pretty much what has happened there. Gwydion has cocked up, and he spends the rest of it trying to. I know you'll disagree with this.
I don't think he. I think he deliberately sets out to cause these situations with that forethought and that sense of he is changing the dynamic. I mean, there is that sense in various myths where he is that his. He has a sense of destiny, and he's going to manipulate that destiny. That's how I view him. He's not like Loki, who is a wildfire coming through and going, I'm going to do this. Not necessarily kind of forward thinking that, then suddenly going, oh damn, now I've got to make reparations. I've sort out my mess. But Gwydion is much more strategic in what he's doing, and he knows what he's doing at every turn. There's no.
There are things, if you're on a human level, that Gwydion does is unforgivable. Without a doubt. If you look at these as mythologies that are there to portray some kind of occult or hidden message, then it goes in a different direction. And Gwydion becomes far more to me. Gwydion becomes far less like Loki and more like Odin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because Odin or Woden is a god who is a bringer of inspiration, a magician, that wanderer with his wide-brimmed hat and his missing eye that he placed beneath the well of wisdom, the magician. But I wouldn't necessarily entirely surrender myself to trust him, right?
No.
And the same to me, if I was to, I would say Gwydion is more that energy. He is definitely the magician, the sage, the bard, the storyteller, the poet, in the same way as what Odin is with his mead of poetry, but he's also he's got that trickster energy that will always keep you on the edge, that you can never quite fully.
You'd never trust him as far as you could throw him.
Well, I would trust him as far as I could throw him, but probably not any further. I think that's probably it. I would trust that energy to a degree. But at the same time, that is what this story is all about. It's that kind of energy.
He's driving the fourth branch. He's the driver of this. And it's interesting when you get into I think this is what I was saying about the characters. 30 years or more working with these characters, you kind of subsume yourself into the stories on a surface level at first, and then you peel back the layers with the experiences, with working with meeting them in meditations, in kind of musical creative ways, which we've done a lot over the years together and separately. There are so many ways to kind of feel about these people. Well, people, I keep calling them people because that's the language we use, but they're not, are they? They're so much more complex.
Else. Yeah, I think the thing as well, I've always felt, that Pryderi becomes Llaewgelfes, and he becomes Llaewgelfes when he dies on the battlefield and is reborn from Arianrhod. Yeah. Now there are going to be hundreds of people who disagree with me on that, and I think that's fine. But I think it's not fine to say that is wrong, because myths are there to be interpreted on a very personal level. And so I take that to me as being something that makes sense to me. If the Mabinogi is the story of the Mabon, the divine child, I'm not saying necessarily that Pryderi and Llai are the same being, but they hold within them that same divine spark that travels from one to the other at the point of death and rebirth. And the death and rebirth ain't so far away from each other. Do you know what I mean? In the stories, they happen. And so that's something that has occurred to me.
It's a bardic device and a personal experience. Then.
It is. So those deities, heroes of the story, there are some that I've become very close to. During the second branch, you made me another pendant of 2 ravens that I wore when that one was being created. And man, that one was hard work. That is the second branch.
Brutal. Is
an opera. It's a tragedy. It's a Shakespearean tragedy. Everybody dies pretty much, and
it's a bit like Hamlet. There's nobody left.
Yeah, and recording and writing that was really hard because there was no space in it for a Dave the Bard upbeat 6/8 anthem. That was a really hard journey on the second branch, but it was a really powerful one as well, because it enabled me to sort of connect with that real leadership role of Bran. Let him who be a chief, let him be a bridge, and all those things. It's epic. It's epic. When Branwen is looking over the ocean, she sees, the forest on the ocean coming to. I just couldn't wait to write that song, Forest on the Ocean. It was just like, and I knew it couldn't be mandolins. It had to be big drums and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the third branch, weirdly enough, was my least favourite of all of the branches.
Oh, I loved doing the artwork for that.
Well, I approached it. I thought, this is quite a linear thing. It's like, this happens. They go to England 3 times, and then that happens, and that's kind of the story. And I thought, how is that going to happen? But then you realise that actually, probably of all of the tales, the third branch is one of the most magical.
Yeah,
because the
most mystical.
Yeah, the whole thing is held within a magical mist that has been cast
with that magical cauldron.
And the cauldron that disappears, and the castle that disappears, and I mean, there's
so many layers in that. I still haven't unpicked even a bit of it.
Well, go on, tell me about some of the artwork for the second and third branch then.
The first branch was I mean, just that image of the white horse. Rhiannon for me is cognate with Epona and various other horse entities, which is something I've been connected with for such a long time. Since I was a child, I used to dream of horses and riding horses. So that one I found easier to interpret. The second branch, I mean, what an emotional roller coaster. It's kind of like that sense of the coming together of those 2 nations. I'm half Irish as well as so I'm like but I love Bran, and I loved interpreting that story, but my God, was it emotional. But again, that sense of the animals all the way through, that sense of, that sense of journey, and that epic with Evnisian being the Loki character and that, oh my gosh. trying to portray that, and the terror of the horses when he's, all of that kind of stuff, and making. Yeah, that was quite hard in some ways emotionally, but I felt very connected. I've always felt very connected with Bran. Bran was one of the first characters that I was ever. Yeah, it's like in the Battle of the Trees, Bran.
Yes,
he's there as his Gwydion.
Yes,
and it's kind of like I was always rooting for Bran, and he felt like, yeah, the Battle of the Trees feels like the new lot coming in and shoving out the old lot, and Bran being the older ones, kind of going, time to move back. And I found
maybe a Vanya and Asia kind of thing.
I'm rooting for the older.
Yeah, me too, most of the time. Yeah.
And then comes the third branch, and there's all this kind of mystical other stuff, and the cauldrons. I mean, cauldrons for me are they're a fundamental thing, and that the breath of the Nine Maidens, kindling there's just such a powerful thing, and that's that bit for me. But it was all the mice in the field, and that again, you've got that transformation of human in inverted commas to animal, and that sense of the world being something that is more than the human, and that every time you look at these stories, so my little mice, these cheeky little
they were
what's-its, nicking all the corn every night, and just
that really was an epic cover.
I really enjoyed the artwork of that, and the kind of interpretation of that stuff. But when I came to the fourth branch, I really couldn't get on. I really had trouble with that. I had to deal with some inner demons with that one. Some serious inner demons before I could even tackle that artwork. And I literally had to cut the human aspect out of it, or I wouldn't have been able to do it.
So you concentrated more on the animal transformation.
Yeah, because it came to, I think I had the most revelations on the fourth branch artwork, personal revelations and kind of mythological revelations, and it brought me some peace, actually. Weirdly, it was quite cathartic doing that artwork, whereas I enjoyed the third branch. I was traumatized by the second branch because it was just so emotional, operatic, as you say, and I enjoyed that. I had that beautiful image of the horse. I found the source material for the artwork was just, it spoke to my soul. That artwork spoke to my connection to the animals, and I think the second branch was much more human, weirdly.
The second branch,
yeah, is that what I said?
Yeah.
The second branch stayed a lot more human. There wasn't so much of that, although it was there, but the first, the third and the fourth was so animistic for me that particularly, like I say, with the fourth one, I don't think I could have interpreted it through a human perspective, because it was just it was too much emotionally for me.
Yeah, I think as well as the comments online, the fourth branch, as I say, was always my favourite branch. It was the one that I was looking forward to doing most until I got to it.
Yeah.
And then it was really hard. partly because I felt like I really wanted to do this one justice, because I know it's a lot of people's favourite branch. It is, you know, for a lot of people, this is the fourth branch is the Mabinogi, you know, to a lot of people. And I also wanted to, you know, to do those gods and spirits honour, you know, and I wrote it 3 times. If you remember, I wrote it and then threw it in the bin, and I wrote it and threw it in the bin. It was the third one that did, and then I recorded me speaking it 3 times as well, because I really wanted to reconnect with Pryderi's voice. And the first 2 times I did it, I had other stuff going around my head that I had to shut out, and then eventually I just said, no, this is like I say, this is for you, Gwydion. This is for you, Blodeuwedd. This is for you, Clay and Pryderi. This is my promise that I made. I'm finishing this cycle. And on the third time, I think I keyed into his voice and his spirit again. And there were some key points during the tale that in the book, in the translation, I don't think they feel like, to me, they don't feel like they give them the space that moment deserves. The death of Pryderi, for instance.
My God.
In the translation, he literally dies and they took his body away, and that's it. This is the character that has been born, stolen, taken to the other world, reborn again, you know, goes off to fight in the second branch, comes back, you know, is trapped in a castle in the third branch, in the fourth branch, he just dies, you know, in the battlefield, that's it. I thought, no, this is Pryderi. This is the Mabon, you know, to me, as I said, this is the Mabon. So I wanted that moment on the battlefield to be huge. And so that's when I wrote the song Pryderi's Lament, and I wrote to Suj again. I said, come on, one last time. Give me your voice as Rhiannon again, and sing with me this duet as we did in the first branch of Mother and the Mabon. That's when we were reunited. And at his death, they are reunited again, and his soul is taken away to the other world. And I felt that needed something so much more epic. And I'm not going to say what I did, because I don't.
I have to say though, there's a thing with Dave's songs. He knows if he's got a good one, because there's the cryometer.
The cryometer.
It's quite hard to do. I might sound a bit hard-faced here, but Dave knows if it's hit home, and I grizzle.
My work here is done.
Shifted the chilly little heart.
Yeah. And that's a point where I've been told time and time again, and I saw it on the beta test night. There were tears getting to the stage, which I was very much appreciative of. I thought that's good. That's what I wanted. So that was one point. Another point was the Englyn. When Gwydion goes into the other world, sees the world tree and the eagle on the top ruffling its feathers with the maggots falling, Gwydion says, I sing this Englyn, and he basically, there is 3 verses, and then that's it. And I thought, no, this moment needs epicness. I thought, what does it need? I said, it needs that Englyn was sung in Welsh. It needs the Welsh in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I texted our good friend again,
bless him and love him, Christopher. You're a star.
So not only is he the monk who introduces every album, he is Gwydion's voice in the other world, and he sent me his voice saying the Englyn in Welsh. And so I've got this big orchestration going on underneath, these strings and drums and stuff, and then within it you just hear Chris's voice saying it in Welsh, and then over the top of that I say it in English. And I think that's a moment that, you know, people think it's funny when I say I listen to my own stuff, but I mean, why wouldn't you? You know, if you like what you do, You know,
you do the stuff that you wish to
I could hear.
listen to.
Yeah, exactly. So when I hear that, it brings me up in goosebumps, and I created it. You know, it does, and that's my moment. That's when if I can go, oh, that's good,
And not pick it to pieces like most creatives do.
Yeah,
Stuff.
Yes. So that was another, and the forming of Bloodolith is another moment in time when I just thought that needs to be brought out in a moment. So I wrote that verse. You know, moon upon the still of water, we call to you, spring's fair daughter. That verse that brings her forward, and she is there, floating just above the pool on the night of a full moon. In my mind, I had her toes just dripping the water slowly from her toes as the water comes off of her body.
I quite liked the interpretation you had. I thought it was slightly pornographic, but it was in as much as you the way you described her manifestation from the pool and the flowers and stuff.
Yeah.
In lots of Alan Lee's interpretations of the Mabinogi. Oh my God, I love that man's artwork so much. However, working on how Dave had interpreted it, I thought, no, that's far more. When she comes into manifestation, she is relishing.
Yeah.
The senses, you know, the air on her skin, the sense of having physical limbs in a manifest world. You know, if she's come through from the other world, who knows what she was there?
Yeah.
You know, whether she was a manifestation of the flowers. That's why they used them. You know, but in that cohesive human form, there's something other. You know, and it's delicious and magical and sensual, you know, and trying to interpret that without being pornographic.
Yes. Absolutely, yes. But that was a beautiful moment, and I love that moment, and I really enjoyed recording and writing that. And then the other point is when Gwydion is chasing Blodeuwedd over the mountains towards the end of the story, and her maidens fall into a lake, which we have been to. So we went off on that journey, that first journey, went off to Llyn Morwynion, the lake of the maidens, up in the mountains, and we went there with our friend Wendy, and I for whatever reason I separated myself off, and I just stood on the edge of this lake, and the lake is black. It's absolutely a black lake.
It's black.
And it's silent up there, you know, in the mountains. And as I was standing by the edge of the lake, I literally felt like, it's okay, I'll just dive in.
Yes.
It's fine.
There
and
is
I had
like
that
a
urge.
siren call, isn't
Yeah.
there? It's like it is like you can feel it. Even I felt it, you know, it's like that siren call of the maidens in the dark.
Yeah. So I thought I need a song about Llyn Morwynion, about the Lake of the Maidens, because of that. Because I thought, so these maidens, they walk backwards and they fall in and they drown. And that's it again in the translation. That's it. And I think no, and no again. There's got to be more going on.
Sometimes these translators have no soul.
Well, you know, maybe the monk was in a rush. I don't know. But either way, I thought, no.
I'm trying to play this down, people. Try to play it down.
I'm not in a rush. So I thought, what could be happening there? And then I found and I hope I've got the Gworgach Annwn, or the Gurgach Annwn, which are the lake spirits. So the Lady of the Lake is one of those, you know. They are the spirits that live within lakes. And I just thought, that's what's in that lake. It's those. And I just had this image of, and you conjured exactly in the artwork for the album. You got this totally, because I just had these just coming out of the top of the water and just looking over the top of the black water, looking there, and this voice just singing, come to us, come join us. And that's the voice that these maidens would have heard that led them to not necessarily walk backwards with fear, but actually to walk into the lake and to drown, with the call of the ladies within the lake of Llyn Morwynion. And sung on the album by our friend Rachel.
Yes, beautiful voice. Yeah, beautiful voice, Rachel.
But that was another moment in the album where I thought, no, this needs a bit more of a punch.
Yeah,
I
think there's also this sense of, at that end transformation where Gwydion is full of spite and ire, and the transformations happen. That the power. I'm enjoying the fact that you've given back the power of the magic and that sense of transformation back to the women of the story. If the maidens are called back to the other world, you don't know, they might have been, and they fall back into the arms of the water and go, bye, I'm out of here. You have no power over me anymore. And when the artwork cover is a barn owl flying away, and for me she's kind of I didn't put it on the actual album cover, but I've done a print of it, but all of the flowers are falling away from her, all of the flowers that made her brought her through into the realm fall away as she flies away. And for me it's kind of like, well, you can have those back. I'm free of your nonsense, and I'm off
into the night.
Into the night.
You may think you've cursed me, but I now have the freedom of the sky. I can see in the dark through, and I am, and the owl is such an incredible bird, and I've felt that that she is like the flowers of Beltane and the owl of Samhain. She's the goddess that is both of those in one. Blodeuwedd and Blodeuwedd, with her transformation at the end. And of course that takes us to the end of the fourth branch. And the end of the journey that started 10 years ago.
Do you feel your journey's complete?
Yes, I do. I feel like that.
With the Mabinogi, completely. Magically, creatively.
Yes, I feel like if anyone, I think, who spends 10 years literally working with one book of 4 stories.
It's 30 years really, or more, isn't it?
It is, but before the journey started in 2016, if you listen to my music, you'll see that there are a lot of other energies, a lot of songs, a lot of different topics, but from 2016 to now, it's been pretty much the Mabinogi, and those 4 books and those things. When I finished it, when I pressed stop on that beta test night, I felt a huge amount of relief and emotion, because it did feel like a completion, and it felt like I was relieved and very emotional at the same time, but it does feel like that journey is now complete. And over the last month, Mr. Old Horny has been back in my life again, saying, right, the Green Man has been back in my life again, saying, where have you been for the last 10 years? You haven't written a song for me since 2012, so yes, I think that journey is done, if these journeys are ever done, but and I'm very, very, very proud of what I have offered into the history and continuing interpretation of these tales.
I think you should be.
I
think the thing with these things is that the effect that working with mythologies over an extent, half a lifetime, for both of us, really, that you're never completely done with them, because in some way they've they've inveigled their way into your, your...
That is a great word. Inveigled. Is that a real word?
Of course it's a real word.
I'm going to have to use
a dictionary.
I'm going to have to use inveigled a lot more.
They've become entwined and kind of part of who you are and how you express yourself. And the language of Britain, Wales, the land... I mean, these stories were probably much wider known. There are a lot of very local Welsh. Ceredigion and Taliesin is centred around Bala and is very local to there. Yet it has drawn so many people to explore all of the tales and probably led in. For me, that was my lead in to the Mabinogi. And I think that sense of journey is written in the landscape and becomes written through us, and how we express ourselves in the world. The mythologies and how we interpret them, whether you do it in art or writing, whether you do it in music, however you do that, they leave an indelible mark. And I think both of us have felt that.
Yeah, very much. I have my feelings of they haven't changed necessarily, but they've probably honed in on that myths may feel like they begin at a point on the earth. But a lot of the time, the message and energy and feel and mystery of that mythology is not linked to that point of the earth.
No,
it's something far broader.
Yeah.
And I feel like the myth and mystery that is expressed, for instance, in the Ceredigion tale, that certainly centres around Llyn Tegid in the story. Is inspiration and of the awen and of that bardic energy of poetic inspiration, But that same energy to me is held within the story of when Odin goes into the mountain and retrieves the mead of poetry. The mead of poetry and the awen, to me, are the same thing expressed by two different cultures, and they aren't linked to those lands. They are the thing that they are. They are the awen, they are inspiration, they are the mead of poetry, they are things. So although they are born from areas, they express things that are far bigger than those areas themselves.
I think that's why they survive, because they speak to something eternal that we're always seeking. For me, the Ceredigion story is a lot about initiation as well, and I felt that even before, kind of studying with the Obod stuff, and it wasn't really a part of the Obod stuff when I
not in the first.
No. It wasn't, but it's something that is transformative. And I think myths, when you connect with a particular myth, whether it be the Mabinogi, whether it be Ceredigion, whether it be whatever it is, from whatever culture you come from, there is a treasure trove of story. And when you pull away the human overlays, those stories are similar. There are elements that are always there. They're transformative, they're initiatory, they're magical, they're about your relationship with the earth, with yourself, with the cosmos on a larger scale. They are microcosms of the macrocosm.
Whoa. That sounds like a perfect moment to wind up and to end. Oh, what a nice chat.
Yeah, it was a nice chat. I wasn't sure how this was going to go. It's a bit weird interviewing your husband.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
and his voice rose and fell as the spell songs filled the hall with the magic of word and of deed. Silver branch calls to every ear in heart and soul. Honey tongue sings the spell your heart has always known. I will be your guide. Doors they open wide. To other worlds we'll fly away. When song, all that was is will ever be. 13 moons, the witch's son will claim his destiny. But youth will claim the prize. On golden wheat he lies, consumed, reborn, he shines away. Spell singer, charm weaver, spell singer, charm weaver. Spell is sung, and the world will be forever changed. Fire has gone, spirits dance in embers that remain. Home from distant shores, this time and space once more. Your soul still yearns to soar away. Spell singer, charm weaver. Spell singer, charm weaver. Spell singer, charm weaver. Spell singer, charm weaver. Well, there we go. Following the talky bit, you heard Spell Singer from the 4th Branch album, and my CDs are now available exclusively from the Obod online store. I'll put a link in the show notes. I used to have my own online store, but sadly it became impossible to keep track of Trump's tariffs. And thankfully the order stepped in so they can still post CDs anywhere in the world. And the album is also out on Apple Music and YouTube to stream. We've had some problems delivering to Spotify, but hopefully it'll appear there in the next few weeks. But my friends, seriously, if you want to support this musician, in fact, if you want to support any musician, still buy the CD or download. So that is a show. I hope you enjoyed mine and Kerry's talky bit, but before I go, let's have the results of last month's competition. The prize was a copy of the Sherwood Oracle by Mark Ryan and John Matthews and illustrated by Yvonne Gilbert. And the question I asked was, during John's talk, he spoke about the spirit of the fields who is planted, throws up his head, amazing everyone, and then is cut down at the knee. What is that spirit's name? Well, the name is John Barleycorn, and the first name drawn from the hat and winner of that amazing deck is Matthew Tufts from Canada. Congratulations, Matthew, new listener, and you've won right away. Well done. That deck will be with you very soon. The prize this month, no surprise really, is a copy of my album Mabinogi, the fourth branch. And the question I'd like you to answer is, the first three branches and half of the fourth branch are narrated by the Mabon. What is his name? The first three branches and half of the fourth branch are narrated by the Mabon. What is his name? Email your answer along with your full postal address to podcast@druidry.org, and one of you will win my new album and also be able to see all of Kerry's amazing artwork too. So that is a show. I will see you next month for DruidCast episode 226. But until then, have the most glorious solstice, my friends, and I wish you all as ever peace and blessed be. Goodbye.